I'm Bill Anton. Today we're going to talk about something that should be of interest to all of us, and that is how our brain and access to the more evolved parts of our brain operate in our daily lives, and what keeps us from really reaching our fullest potential. After we're born, until about age 6 or 7, the brain is essentially in beta. And what that means is that all the impulses, all the stimulation coming from the outside world, our parents, our friends, our grandparents, our relatives, all that stimulation is just taken in uncritically. And all of that stimulation really reaches most of the parts of the brain that really it needs to reach. But every day as we live longer and longer, there rubs, like a parent gets angry with us for spilling ink on their new couch or spilling milk on the table. And so there are a bunch of little events that occur that cause the impulses from getting sidetracked. That is, those impulses are no longer reaching the frontal lobe and the desired parts of our brain in the way they need to. And they get sort of stopped along the way. And as a result of that, we experience negative emotions and frustration and really the prototypes of a lot of the thoughts and uncomfortable feelings that as adults we have flowing through our minds throughout the day, and only can imagine what it must be like to be a young child and to be free of all of that. Or those of us that are lucky enough to have pets, we also experience that in dogs, where they just seem totally forgiving, totally happy. They experience the full brunt of their emotions and happiness when we arrive home. So how can we get to be like that? And so that curiosity, along with the frustration, leads us eventually to be curious about, well, how can we get back there? It's almost like part of the brain recalls what that was like. And there's still areas of our functioning that are non-conflictual. That is where we didn't experience rubs. And those areas are the seeds or the beginnings of opening us up to that larger part of ourselves and finding a way to get those impulses back into the frontal lobes. And then one day we stumble upon a method for achieving or moving in that direction. And one of the most effective methods of doing that is simply meditation. And because of that, we reap some benefits after we practice for a while. And we begin to realize that sometimes during the day when ordinarily we'd be frustrated or our reactions to situations would normally be negative, that in fact they're just the opposite, that in the midst of chaos or frustration, we're experiencing an inner calmness. And that's the result of attention focusing that really encourages our impulses to get to the frontal lobes of our brain, which incidentally, as I've said before, is where we do our best thinking. And we're actually the most recently evolved executive center of our brain allows us to be the most adaptable at the same time. And so as we practice and become more and more adept at that, finally we get to a state where we feel adaptable, we have a sense of inner peace, we live in the present moment, and we're more effective than we've ever been. And that's the result of meditation. And that's the story, in very simplified and crude terms, of how meditation can unravel the rubs of the past and liberate us to have access to all that is truly most effective and most enjoyable and most engaging in our lives. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your listening. And as always, if you have any comments or ideas, at CEOE, we're definitely open to them.